Hello everyone. Today we are diving into a topic that is central to understanding the diversity of human language dialects. Let's begin by saying what a dialect actually is. A dialect is a particular form of a language that is specific to a region or social group. It involves variations in pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary that distinguish it from the standard language or other dialects of the same language. For instance, in the English language, the pronunciation of words like bad or cross can vary significantly depending on whether you are in the United States, the United Kingdom, or Australia. But dialects are more than just pronunciation. They are deeply rooted in the identity and history of the communities that speak them. For example, in the United States, the Southern dialect, with its unique expression and pronunciation, carries with it the history of American South, its struggles, its culture, and its evolution over the time. Now, you might wonder, why are dialects so important? Understanding dialects give us insight into how languages evolve and adapt over the time. They reflect not just geographical differences but also social factors such as class, age, gender, and ethnicity. Dialects are a mirror of the social dynamics within a community. Let's consider the example of English again. There are well known dialects like Cockney, which originated in London's East End and is famous for its rhyming slang and unique features that sets it apart from other forms of English. Another example is the Appalachian Appalachian dialect in the United States, which has preserved many older forms of English that have long since faded from standard use. Dialect variation isn't just about relational differences, it's also about social identity. For instance, in some areas, the way you speak can signal your social class, your level of English, your level of education, or even your profession. In this sense, dialects are powerful tools of social distinction and cultural expression. Now, let's talk about the relationship between dialects and languages. Often, the line between dialects and a language is not clear cut. In some cases, what we call dialects could be considered separate languages if not for political or social factors. A famous example is the distinction between Mandarin and Cantonese. Although both are considered dialects of Chinese, they are not mutually intelligible. Many speakers of one cannot easily understand the other. This brings us to the idea that the difference between a dialect and a language can sometimes be more about power and politics than about linguistics. In summary, dialects are an essential part of the linguistics landscape. They provide us with a window into the story, culture, and social structure of the communities that speak them. Throughout this presentation, we'll explore how dialects form, the various ways they differ, and their significance in our modern world.
Okay, the next aspect that I'll talk about is factors influencing dialect formation. In the formation of dialects, many factors can influence them, but in this occasion, I just talk about the three important factors: geography, history and migrations, and linguistic contact. But first still remember that dialects refers to a whole group of language features, including vocabulary, grammar, and how the language gets used. Okay, the geography factor. The geographic location of a community of speakers can greatly influence the development of a dialect. But why geographic factor is important? Because the geographical location of a group of speakers can play an essential role in shaping a dialect. In the actuality exist millions of dialects around the world, but today I want to mention some English dialects. Some of them are British English, American English, Australian English, Canadian English, Indian English, and Nigerian English. We can find these dialects depending on the ubication of the country in the continents all around the world. The next factor, history and migrations. The basic cause of dialects differentiation is linguistic change. Every living language constantly undergoes change in the various elements. Because languages are extremely complex systems of science, it is inconceivable that linguistic evolution could affect the same elements and even transfer them in the same way in all localities where one language is spoken and for all speakers in the same locality. It's important to mention that throughout the history, some countries are exposed to colonizations, migrations, and conquests, which contribute to different variations within the language. And after this, create a new dialects around the world. The next factor is linguistic contact. But what linguistic content are important with dialects? Because dialects are the essence of a language, reflecting the diverse histories, traditions, and identities of the people who speak them. It's important to mention also that in the linguistic tree we can find an important discipline that is dialectology. But why dialectology is important? Because it is a branch of linguistics that is responsible for the study of dialects. The variation most commonly occurs as a result of relative geographic or social isolation and made a difference in the vocabulary, grammar, or pronunciation. The discipline of dialectology analyze the difference in pronunciation, vocabulary, grammar, and other linguistic aspects that occurs in some regions or social groups. For this reason, it's important that we know about the linguistic content and with the dialects because to have a better idea of what is the dialect in general.
Hi, so I'm talking about the dialect differences in between each other, and I like to start off with a little bit of history. Since, in historical sense, it is also called a dialect to those languages that have a common ancestor, like Germanic languages such as English, Swedish, and German, each one developing through time, lexicon, or intonation. Speakers of closely related languages can still communicate with each other using their native languages with little variance. In countries where the same language is spoken, it is easier to tell the difference between dialects since they already know the standard language. There are specific terms to label the dialects used in certain groups. The dialect each individual uses, it's called idiolect. Patois is the term from French used to identify dialects used in rural areas, and the dialect used by a mass of people from a specific social group or region in a daily basis. It's called vernacular. Every living language constantly changes its various elements slightly, but after time it becomes notorious. Another example could be how Latin relates to Romanian, Spanish, French, and Italian, and I'm not even mentioning how many dialect variants each language has, which some might sound more like Latin or its variant. These differences focus on phonetic, lexicon, and syntax. Plenty of linguists focus more in phonetic features such as vowels, consonants, and intonation. English speakers may pronounce the word greasy with an S sound, whereas others may pronounce it with a Z sound, which may sound like greasy. British accent is also well known on how it differs on intonation or multiple words, even acknowledging it as standard English. Now, for lexical variation, can help to point out where a person is from and allows us to geographically locate this person, or even tell about someone's social background or occupation. For example, how these words differ from on both American English and British English. For example, a room we may call it in American English an apartment, whereas in British English will be a flat. Now, for syntax, which is focusing on sentence formation, some expressions differ from word choices such as sick to his stomach, sick at his stomach, sicken, or sicken. Now, accent and dialect are the same. According to the elements mentioned previously, such as structure, dialect will be based on the set of words chosen by a group of people, keeping in mind their social or regional background, whereas accents refers to the intonation an individual from a certain region uses. To sum up, it may vary depending on the amount of speakers and the barriers separating groups of people from each other.
Hello, everybody. My name is Julio. I'm going to talk about examples of dialects. So, first of all, I want to explore these dialects are a variation of a language. They do not have to be a language themselves, so they are regional. Mostly, they are regional of a country. If starting with it, we have mainstream American English, MAE. It is also called Standard American English, but I prefer saying Mainstream American because it has an acronym with another dialect from its own country. Mainstream American English refers to the form of English used in formal communication across the United States. It is often perceived as a neutral or accentless version of American English, though in reality, it is just one dialect among many. When it said neutral or accentless, you can notice if you depending on the state the people you talk, they can have an accent. So what is mainstream American is that they don't have an accent. They are neutral or accentless, so they obviously can be perceived as the pure version of English. For example, I have Joel. Joel is a two-syllable word in Standard American English or Mainstream American English, but in other dialects in United States, it can be perceived as a one-syllable word. For example, you can understand me saying you all, but in Southern American English, they say Joel. You notice that they say it like it's one on one word. You, for example, you all are coming with me. Next, we have Southern American English. Southern American English, the acronym will be SAE, like standard. It is the most widely recognized regional dialect of American English. It is categorized by certain features related to how words are pronounced and arranged in a sentence, as well as what words are actually used. Uh, Southern American region is the south of America. So this will be close to Mexico. We have Alabama, Texas, Mississippi. Uh, Obviously, a lot of them are in the southern region, like I said, and they have an interesting thing they have it happens in there, they have a merge. We can see in the example we have pin pen. In the Southern American English dialect, there is a merger of the word pin and pen. If we use the International Phonetic Alphabetic IPA, we can notice in Southern dialect they say pin, but in both words. So we cannot, if we use the mainstream American English, we can say pin and pen. We notice the difference. But in Southern dialect, we do not cannot understand the difference about it. We mostly use it with the context they give us on the sentence. They will say pen, pen, pen. Oh, it doesn't matter if it's pin or pen. It will be always pen. Then we have Castilian Spanish. Castilian refers to the Romanesque language born in the Kingdom of Castile in the Middle Ages. Castilian Spanish is spoken in the northern and central Spain, and about 94% of Spaniards speak Castilian. This is because Castilian is almost in everywhere in Spain, and they have a little bit of dialects, other dialects. They have the Andalus dialect in Spain, but Castilian is most of the people. And Castilian has an interesting thing. They have a term called ceseo, where they pronounce the S and Z sound as a TH sound. We have the word chorizo. Chorizo will be pronounced as chorizo. You notice that I do not pronounce the S or the Z. We say it like chorizo. They also have other words like cansado, they would say cansado. Taxi, taxi. Llama, llama. I cannot do that last word, but you can understand it. They have different. So, and lastly, we have Western Honduran dialect. This dialect is spoken in the western regions of Honduras, such as Santa Barbara, Copan, and Ocotepeque. It was influenced by the Guatemalan Spanish. This is because those departments are close to Guatemala, so a lot of those places took the dialect itself from the Guatemalan Spanish. That would also be a dialect. And in these areas, they have a conservative pronunciation of the S sound and a use of the voiceless J sound. Example, nosotros in this area will often be pronounced dropping the S at the end, so it might sound as nosotros. We normally say the word nosotros. We can notice the S word at the end, but in the western part of Honduras, we can hear them say nosotros. They drop the S sound.
I'll be talking about how a globalization can affect dialects. It is true that technological advances and economic advances had led to an advance in communication for many countries, but it can also mean something negative, like the idea of the dialects lost because of the globalization, and how globalization can be affecting the way dialects develop. An example for that can be the dialect, the Scottish dialect Cromarty, that disappeared because of the industrial evolution of the fishing. This dialect consisted in a terminology about fishing and fishing lifestyle. But when the fishing was industrialized in the area during the 1950s, this dialect disappeared. But not everyone agrees with the idea of globalization affecting dialects, like the example of the linguistic William Labov. He thinks that dialects are not disappearing because of the globalization, but is completely the opposite. He thinks that when a dialect disappears, it's not disappearing, but fusing with another dialect. Immigration is considered another source for new dialects. because when a new culture fuses with another, it leads to the creation of new dialects. Many linguists are dedicated to saving the memory of smaller dialects, saving their characteristics through text and audio recordings. Web archives like the International Dialect of English Archive work tirelessly to record all the varying nuances that can occur in English dialect around the world. These are some dialects that were affected by globalization, like Cornish in the UK, Barbarian in Germany, and Yuki in USA. These are the reference for the information.